Hi, I'm John Mayfield, the real estate tech guy with another Global Real Estate School podcast.
Okay, good.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to put this podcast up, and I'll kind of pull some of that off of the Facebook Live. But for those of you who are watching on Facebook Live, well, the joys of technology. I'm a technology guru, I think, and it still causes me some problems. I'm using my little AirPods, so I hope you can hear me okay, Katie. And
I can hear you fine.
Great. And my little dog Lucy's over here, who loves to snore. Great. So I've asked her to keep her snoring down, but you could hear a strange sound. Well, I wanted Katie. Katie and I we help those of you who are watching who want to get your real estate license. We help you prepare for the big exam. And so I thought it would be really cool to just bring another instructor, a school owner in who we could just talk a little bit about preparation and things you should do. But I'll let you, Katie, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up teaching pre-licensed real estate. What kind of gravitated you toward pre-licensed real estate?
Well, I was originally licensed to sell real estate in Iowa, and I was there for a number of years, and then became the education director at the Iowa City Association of Realtors. And I wanted a warmer climate and a bigger board to work with, so I came down to Springfield, Missouri, and was the education director here for about a year and a half, and then decided, I think I want to open my own school. And so that's what I did. I kind of took a leap of faith.
Yeah, cool.
And so I thought, I just started teaching the pre-license and also continuing ed.
Yeah, and she's been doing a great job down in Springfield. I kind of took the other turn. I had taught the live classroom for years and years and years, and in 2002 or 3, I just got burned out and kind of walked away from the pre-license, but I kept my school intact, and my mom kept saying, or my wife kept saying, you need to put your real estate school online. So I did that a couple of years ago. So Katie has Real Estate School of the Ozarks, and she works in the Springfield, Branson, that whole Southwest corridor down there. And she has been so gracious to send a lot of students to Global Real Estate School for the online part.
I have
great.
Sent someone to you today, so hopefully they'll hook up with you.
Yeah, and I have been so fortunate that I have listeners and people who are listening to the podcast, watching on Facebook, all over the country. So it doesn't matter what state you're in. We're going to just talk to you today about preparing. So if you're in California, Nevada, it doesn't matter. But what would be, if you had to give, or what are 2 or 3 things you always try to tell your students to, you got to do this if you want to pass this test? I think every instructor has a few of those. But
absolutely. The first thing I say is listen to the instructor. And that's just so important. And no matter where you go, stay with that instructor. Try not to go elsewhere. Try not to go to YouTube or other websites to get information, because the instructor is teaching for you to be able to pass the exam on the least amount of tries, and hopefully on the first try.
Right.
And we really concentrate on our own technique. I think helps the students. So if we start listening elsewhere, we might get information that isn't on our test, or of course, we don't know all the questions that are on the exam, but we have a general idea that helps us get the students through the exam. So I always say, listen to what we say, and always think about. I get people that come back and say, Katie, I heard you speaking to me during the test, because there's certain things I'll say, really think about how you're representing your client on some of the Missouri questions, especially. Right. And so just really concentrate on what we have to say is
right. Right. I think that's so important. And I agree. I've heard my friend Kim Darty always said that, don't don't go out and try to get information from other sources, because you will get confused. And sometimes I'll have students that will say, well, someone in the office told me that community property is this, that, or the other. And it's like, wait a minute, they are not your teacher. They're not the school. So I think that's great advice. Now, your particular school, I mean, there are some schools that do it in a week, 8 hours a day, and then 6 days, and Monday through Friday, Monday, and you're ready to go take the test. How do you break yours up, or what do you think is a good time scenario? Because I know with online, I'm telling students, and these are people who work other jobs, it could take 3 to 4 weeks, working a little bit every night. But how do you do your normal class schedules run?
Well, I run 2 different schedules, and I do a day schedule and then I do an evening schedule, and both of them involve Saturdays. So my 48-hour runs for Monday through Saturday, 8:30 to 5:30 each day, and then we take a little break Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then we pick up the 24-hour course on the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of the next week, if the student wants to take that particular one. And then we also have an evening Saturday class. We meet Tuesday through Friday evening, 6 to 10 p.m., and Saturday, 8:30 to 5:30, and that runs the full 3 weeks for the full 72 hours.
Okay, good. So yeah, I think if a person's interested in getting their license, you can get it done very quickly, or you can take your time and spread that. It really depends on how you like to study and learn. One thing I've kind of noticed when I first started my online school, I have an opening video students watch, and I said, now it had been a while since I'd taught pre-licensed real estate, but I said, now it's not a sprint, take your time. And I think it was wrong, because some students were thinking that, I should make it a marathon. They were dragging it out too long and forgetting the material. And what I noticed was the people who were passing tended to get into the course, really focus, study, and try to get out pretty quick. So I think your setup sounds like it's ideal, and it's similar to what I'm encouraging people now.
Yeah, that's so important because that information goes out of your head as quickly as it goes in, and you just really need to take that test.
It does. Now, what about the person who says, oh gosh, I've heard that's a really hard test. I've always wanted to get my real estate license, but I don't think I could pass the test. So let's talk a little bit. What's your thoughts on, why do you think the exam is challenging, or how can they overcome that?
Well, I think the exam is challenging because you're not only given questions that you need to know the answer for, but you need to know how to read the question. And it's important. It's almost like the exam is they're separating those who we have to communicate in the real estate business.
Right.
And part of communication is reading and knowing what we're given. Those questions that are on the exam not only test our knowledge of what we've picked up in the class, but also they test our communication skills. So it's just so important to read and reread those questions. So the tips that I say, again, getting back to, listen to what the instructor says, but it's read those questions 2 and 3 times each question, and always read every single answer, because those answers can be so close, and when you see that second answer, oh, that's the right one, it's the 4th answer.
Right.
That's like that for a reason. So we must read everything multiple times.
Right. I think that's very important. And a lot of, I think really, I loved what you said there. We are in a communication business, and they're trying, I think, sometimes to weed out the people who are going to be, I hate to use the word detailed, but I mean, we are handling people's biggest investment they will ever make, sometimes the biggest decision besides getting married that they'll ever make in their lifetime. And so you really have to read, as Katie said, you have to read those questions very carefully. I was telling a lady today who was talking to me about the school, and I said, it's psychologically, they may give you 5 or 6 questions that will just absolutely blow your mind apart. You're like, I have no idea what the answers are. And, you see the 5th one like that. And what I told her is you don't want to panic, because, they're just psychologically that can, if you let that upset you mentally, it will hurt you for the rest of the test. Just keep going, because chances are they'll answer that question, or you'll see something that will help you answer that question. And you can always skip the question. But I also told her, and they're notorious for giving you these great big long questions with all of this information. And then I remember seeing, it said, how does the earnest money show on the closing statement? Well, it's a credit to the buyer, but yet you have taxes, you have the buyer's names and the broker's names and the legal description and what the taxes are and all of this goofy stuff. And they just want to know one simple thing. So yeah, you have to read those questions carefully, know what they want you to answer. Well, and let's just talk a little bit about, because I'd love to hear your take, and I'll tell you mine in a minute. Let's say you narrow it down to 2 choices, and you're like, I want to go with A, but it could be B. So you take A, you mark the question, and you come back and read it and say, maybe I should go with B. What do you suggest to students who are in that dilemma where they narrow it down to 2, they take their gut feeling, and then they come back and want to change the answer?
I always say you have to have a really good reason to change that answer, because typically that first answer we put down is going to be the correct one. And then when we start thinking too much about it, I think when we come back to it again, and I think more tests have been failed with people going back and rechecking their work and changing a lot of answers.
Right, I do too.
Yeah.
And I was listening to an audiobook the other day, and they had some scientific proof about the subconscious mind and whether people believe all of that or not. I kind of think if we put in our minds that we're broke and poor and we don't make any money, that's kind of what will come out of, that's kind of what we'll see as the fruits of those thoughts. I think we ought to put positive, images and information into our minds. But this person was talking about that normally that gut feeling, that intuition, or that thought is like, A seems to be the right answer, is probably because you've studied that and it's been put into your subconscious mind, and that's what's actually rising to the top, and that's why it's kind of making you think this is what it should be. And I'm with you, just mark that answer and don't change it unless you just go back and read it and say, oh gosh, they want to know the quarterly taxes, and I
exactly
income taxes.
Yeah.
Well, a big part of passing this test for the people watching or listening is the fact that there's a lot of terminology and definitions, and they love to use terminology within the question. So if you don't know the terminology, unfortunately, it can make the questions really challenging. Any suggestions? Do some of your students make flashcards, or?
They do. And I always, before my classes start, I always send an email out to the students to suggest if they're a person who likes to use flashcards to go ahead and do that. Mm-hmm. I have, though, had students come back with a stack of flashcards about this. They've put almost the entire book into a big set of flashcards. Yeah. So you have to be careful what you put into flashcards. But definitely, there's so many terms, and especially the Latin terms, foreign language, as we know, is there. And get those definitions, but also how to apply them. But I think flashcards are good for those words that we just don't use all the time. They're the first the first
yeah. And I think you kind of hit on something there too. Part of really passing this test is managing your time and your study time effectively, because I've had students who come in and they would say, oh, I spent all weekend trying to figure out this math problem or a couple of these math. And I always tell people there's not that much math on the test. And generally you can, you can kind of limp through the math part. I'd rather see you studying the financing and the appraisal and the fair housing and understanding all of that than wasting too much time, and I've seen people too prepare, like you said, a stack of flashcards and then they never use them, like they just did them one time. So, but I think it's good, try to pick out terms or make flashcards for those questions you seem to have problems with or issues that you have. Well, listen, I want to just ask you any other words of advice before we cut out here. I appreciate your time.
No, I appreciate you having me, and I just want to reiterate what you said about the math. The math is not something to really worry about. There is not that much math on it. I mean, you could literally miss every math question and still pass the test. So, that's what you said about not worrying too much about it is true. Good.
Well, Katie, thank you so much again. Katie's in Real Estate School of the Ozarks. I'll put her information in the show notes, and it's this is on our My Global Real Estate School Facebook page. It'll also be on iTunes. I'll be uploading that. I know some of you are probably saying, "Gosh, John, you've been gone from our podcast for about a month." I sold my house and the people needed a quick possession, and we talk about all of that in school. So I moved and was on the other side of the transaction, which it really was good for me, Katie, because it reminded me, as real estate professionals, you are going to kind of get into this business and it's going to become second nature to you. Just always remember the people on the other side of the transaction, they don't know what happens after the inspector comes, and they don't know about loan approval. And it's very important that you know these things about contract dates and counter offers. And I went through all of that. And then my mom, unfortunately, was ill and she passed away this past week. So I apologize. I've been gone from our podcast, but I want to start doing more of these where I'm interviewing some great folks like Katie who can reiterate what I'm already reminding you about. But thank you so much, Katie. I have her website address in the notes, but thanks so much, and I appreciate your time, and I hope everyone will have a great day. And you can check out globalrealestate.com. And Katie, your website address, give them that.
It is resozarks.com. So Ozark, resozarks.com.
Yeah, and if you're down in the Southwest corridor, check out her website. You can do the live classroom, and if you prefer to do it online, she's got a link on her website as well. You can go through there or go to Global Real Estate School. Katie, thank you so much.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the podcast for Global Real Estate School. I'm John Mayfield, the Real Estate Tech Guy. Go out and make it a great day.